There's yeah,
All right, we are all set. We're streaming. Everybody's in, so we are good to go.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, I would remind anyone with a cell phone to be sure they're in the off or vibrate position. And I'd like to invite the caller. Good afternoon. On behalf of the family, it's my pleasure to introduce Rabbi Mark Goldfarb with the officiating services for us. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much. To those of us joining from afar during these bizarre pandemic days, we are grateful for our technology that enables family members to be able to join together with us. We gather this afternoon to honor the life and the memory of Esther Rosin. We are deeply, deeply saddened by the death of this intelligent, determined, and entrepreneurial woman, a fun-loving woman, a woman with a sense of humor, a woman who had a zeal and a zest for life, a loving wife, mother, grandmother, aunt, a woman devoted to her family. We assemble together in the shadow that has darkened your lives. And during these bizarre COVID-19 pandemic days, our world is truly turned upside down. It is difficult enough to mourn the death of a mother, all the more complicated when we are unable to gather together to hug each other, to cry on each other's shoulders. We need light when gloom darkens our lives. To whom shall we look if not to the creator of life? We need fortitude and courage when pain and loss assail us. Where shall we find them if not in the thought of the one who preserves all that is good from destruction? O eternal God of life, there are days when our burdens overwhelm us, when our paths are littered with rocks and snags. Although we gather in the light of day, our world is darkened as the shadow of death has intruded into our lives. Help us, O God, to find light even in these dark moments, and enable us to hear the music of life even as we gather surrounded by the silence of death. Help us to draw comfort and courage from each other and from our memories of the times that we shared with Esther. We listen to words of our tradition searching for meaning, words searching for comfort, words reminding us of the blessings of life. Rabbi Alvin Fine wrote, "Birth is a beginning and death a destination." Like we said, it's windy, things are falling around us. But life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but rather in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination. But life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. As we gather here this day to remember, we must recall that we are artists. We are like aerialists on a swinging trapeze, letting go of one ring to catch hold of another. Hold on and let go. A subtle duality that endows our life with meaning, neither denying the past nor foreclosing the future. We are part of the flow of life, the divine process, which gives and takes, creates and retains. We too must give, and we too must take and seize hold. And there comes a time when we must too release and let go. Perhaps the wisest of all words that capture the irrevocable rhythms of our lives are the words of Kohelet, of Ecclesiastes. L'chol zman ve'etz, l'chol chafetz tachat hashamayim. For everything, there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek, a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. L'chol zman ve'etz, l'chol chafetz tachat hashamayim. For everything, there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven. And this is a time of remembering. For it is through remembering that we show gratitude for a life that has been but loaned to us. And so let us apply the healing ointment of memory to our wounded hearts. I first met Esther when I became the rabbi of Temple Beth Or in 2008. I only had a brief opportunity to engage with her over a few times on the telephone, and then her physical distance from our congregation made it no longer possible. I am grateful to Merrick and to Phil for sharing so much about the mother, and from whom we will hear as part of our ceremony. Esther was born 80 years ago to Philip and Katie Zamansky in Coatesville, Pennsylvania. She's one of 3 children born to the Zamanskys and is preceded in death by her parents, her sister Rose, and her brother Simon. 90 years. 90 years. Let us marvel at the history Esther lived and what she experienced. The year that Esther entered the world is the same year that construction began on the Hoover Dam, when Pluto was discovered, and when Toll House cookies were invented. She was 2 years old when FDR was elected to his first term, 3 years old when construction began on the Golden Gate Bridge, when stereo records were invented. Good luck explaining that one to your future child. When the FM radio was invented. She was 4 years old when the game Monopoly is invented. 5, when nylon enters the world. 7 years old, when the shopping cart was invented. She was 8 years old when instant coffee came to be, when the ballpoint pen was developed, and sadly, when Kristallnacht occurred, spelling the beginning of the end of much of European Jewry. She was 11 years old when the United States entered World War II. She was 13 when penicillin was first used to cure a patient, and also when the Slinky and Silly Putty was invented. She was 14 years old when FDR was elected to his 4th term in office. 15 years old when World War II comes to an end. 17 years old when the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. And 18 when the jukebox, Velcro, Frisbee was invented, and when Israel became a modern state. And that's just the beginning of her life. We have yet to get to cell phones, to the internet, to space flight, landing on the moon, all the things that we take as commonplace in today's world. It would be Esther's sister Rose who introduced her to Joseph Rosin. In 1952, Esther and Joseph were married. Together, they would dance in each other's circle to the music of life for 54 years and add to their family tree 2 sons, Merrick and Phil. A family tree that with spouses Joy and Kate has grown to include 4 grandchildren, Maria, Amanda, Cameron, and Chloe, and with Amanda's spouse Antonio, a great-grandchild on the way. And it is to the family that I now turn. Rather than sharing their memories as an echo, let us hear from those who knew Esther best. I begin with Esther's son, Merrick, who wrote the following. After they were married, Mom and Dad left on their honeymoon, seeking adventure and romance, and found it as they drove across the United States, with California being their ultimate destination. They settled in beautiful Montecito, and Southern California was indeed the dream of many in the 1950s. I, Merrick, was born in 1955, and Phil was born in 1957. We were raised in Anaheim, close to everything Southern California has to offer and is famous for. We were brought up in a loving and stable home, going to the same schools together from elementary to high school. While Mom was raising the family and Dad was working as well, she became an executive secretary for the M&M Corporation, not the candy manufacturer, but merchants and manufacturers, which specialized in legal matters. Mom eventually left her job and founded her own paralegal firm, specializing in California unemployment compensation law. She was determined to overcome the adversity and challenges of being a Depression-era child. She had many clients, including Sony, Mitsubishi, Disneyland, Bell Helmets, just to name a few. As avid motorcyclists, thank you, Dad, Phil and I, this is Merrick, of course, enjoyed the perks of Mom's Bell Helmets contract by always having the latest and greatest in Bell Helmets, a very cool thing to have in high school. To this day, I am in awe of how determined Mom was in being a loving mother, wife, and being successful during a time when it was especially challenging for a woman entering the man world in business. Mom was always a woman's liber. Dad indeed married a star. Joseph and Esther lived an adventurous life, and after myself, Phil moved out of the house, they traveled extensively. They traveled Europe, Israel, the Caribbean, Central, South America, Mexico, as well as most of the United States, including Alaska and Hawaii, sharing them with both of us. They had 54 years of love and adventure together. From them, I'm sure I inherited my fascination of travel and adventures. I'm sure that is why I always have to see what is around the next bend. Not a lot of children get to enjoy their parents on an adult level. Phil and I were so lucky to have that. We were so incredibly fortunate to have had pleasure in spending quality time with Mom and Dad as adults, always laughing, loving, and learning from their incredible experiences. Phil and I were truly blessed to call her mom, as well as Kate and Joy and Scott, their third son. Her grandchildren, Maria, Amanda, Cameron, and Chloe, have the honor and privilege to have called her Bubba and Grandma, and Dad called her his wife. Godspeed, Mom. May the next dance with Dad be the one you have always been waiting for. We all love and admire you so much. Your lasting legacy of strength and determination will go on. Wow. Merrick, thank you very much for submitting a well-written and heartfelt eulogy and memories of your mother. I turn to Esther's son, Phil, to share a few words.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming and for viewing. It's truly a difficult time. I truly feel so blessed to have been her son and live in the stable family that we always had. She was just, a rock and was always there for me and my brother. And she was always the brains of the family. My father worked and she invested, well enough that they could do all the things that they did and travel and enjoy each other's company like they did. Throughout my schooling, she was always there to help, and just a tremendous backbone in our family. And again, I just feel truly blessed. I remember her for her being so positive all the time, and most of all, her tremendous sense of humor and laughter. She's always joking around, and every time I would talk to her, we would always have a laugh somewhere in there. And I will always cherish that. So many things that she did for us, and again, I'm just so thankful to be blessed to be her son. And like my daughter says of my wife, she was the best mom ever. And now I know that she's back with her love of her life. And she was able to be with him on Valentine's Day. So rest in peace. We will always remember you.
I invite Esther's granddaughter, Amanda, to share a few words.
Thank you. Bubba, I miss you. She always had the best stories. Every time we visited, we'd make an effort to ask her something new. I loved hearing about her journey across country and how she met Joe. She was the most independent, full of life person I know. I definitely know I got my sense of adventure from her. I probably matched, maybe beat the countries she visited now. It was always so fun to compare notes with her. I got to inherit her car, the Rosin mobile, for a while. So I had her with me all the time. I still do, actually. She had the most genuine love for our family. I know she's where she wants to be. She finally gets to be with her Joe. He was brought up every time we visited. Her dog, Taco, lengthened Joe's life for another 10 years or so. She loved that dog just as much, I think. I'm happy she had as many years as she did and the support from Dad through the end. She's very loved. I'm fortunate to have had so many years with her myself. Thank you.
And Esther's granddaughter, Maria. Try to, sorry.
It's okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I just always loved Bubba's intelligence. She was so intelligent. She was so quick-witted, so funny. She would laugh at anything, and I loved that about her. Dad, you loved her, and I loved how you took care of her. You were there every week, and I know that she loved you, and you made her happy, and so that makes me happy. And I'm just gonna miss her wit and the fact that she loved chocolate, and she would just relish life even as she got old. She loved being around family. She loved her dog Taco. I have a small dog, and she loved him. And I'm just gonna miss her wit and how she made me laugh and how quick she was to laugh at simple things. So thank you.
I'm sure there are more stories from those of you joining us from afar to be shared. Unfortunately, the limitations of our Zoom and YouTube feed prevent us from being able to engage in a more complete recounting of Esther's life, hearing from everybody individually. It is my hope that you will continue to share those stories in your family gatherings there, just as we here will continue sharing those stories about Esther. May we find strength and comfort from those who gather with us this day. And may we be comforted in the knowledge that Esther now rests in peace. And in Olam Haba, the world to come, Esther has been gathered to her kin and to her husband Joe. In a short time, we Jews will celebrate the holiday of Purim, wherein another Esther had to rise to tremendous challenges, had to fight stereotypes, had to pave her way in order to save the Jewish people. From the book of Esther, we hear the story of how Esther risked her life to confront the king regarding Haman's plot to destroy the Jews, to murder the Jews of Shushan and of all the king's land. In a way, Esther faced many such similar challenges. Being a child of the Depression, she knew the intimacy of want and of lacking. Being a woman, making it in the business world at the time that she did, she no doubt confronted many obstacles and many hurdles, and yet through it all, persevered. She did not give up her sense of humor. She did not give up her zest for life, her sense of adventure. She wanted to make sure that she rose to those challenges. Although Esther is no longer physically with us and with you, she will always be a part of your lives through the good deeds that she performed and the many ways in which she touched all of our lives. We pause to remember, to reflect, and to cherish the life of this, our mother, grandmother, our aunt, and our dear friend, Esther Rosin. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember Esther. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember Esther. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember Esther. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember Esther. And when we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, even then we will remember her. So long as we live, so too shall Esther live, for she is now a part of us all. Judaism teaches us that death is part of the fabric of life. When death comes, it tears at that very fabric and leaves us mourners with an intense wound we feel in our hearts. As a symbolic way of showing that wound, a ribbon has been pinned to Phil, and by extension, Merrick, we include you in this ritual as well. Phil, I ask you to stand for a moment, please. I tear this ribbon as a way of showing how Esther's death has torn the very fabric of your life. I ask you to repeat after me. Baruch atah
Baruch atah
Adonai Eloheinu
Adonai Eloheinu
notea
Nateya
betochenu
Bethlehem
chaye
Hayim
olam.
Olam.
We praise you, O God,
We praise you, O God,
who created us
who created us
in your image
in your image
and implanted
and implanted
within us
within us
immortal life.
immortal life. Amen.
Merritt Malloy wrote, "When I die, give what's left of me away to children and to old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you want to give me. I want to leave you something better than words, better than sounds. Look for me. Look for me in the people I've loved and the people I've known. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away." We move to the conclusion of our funeral service with one of our traditional prayers. The prayer is known as the El Meleh Rachamim, which speaks of God as a compassionate being. You can find it in the memorial booklets on page 12. It is a prayer that is recited at funerals and at mourning services when we are often overcome with very powerful emotions. Hurt, loss, grief. It seems odd that we would share a prayer about God as a loving entity at such a time, until we recall that we live in a world blessed by God's love, and that the opposite of love is not hate. Ask any spouse, child, parent, or sibling. The opposite of love is apathy. And where there's apathy, there is no grief, there is no pain, there is no feeling of loss. But neither is there any joy or laughter or love. We live in a world that is blessed by God's love. And so we live in a world that is filled with these powerful emotions. And as we share this prayer, we express our gratitude to God for that love that can help us transcend the distance we feel from Esther and from all of our departed. That love which is boundless, that love which can span the generations. As a tribute to Esther's memory and to all that she brought to our world, I ask us to rise, to stand as we are able. El Melei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Amsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Toharim, Kizohar Haraki Amazirim, Et Nishmat Yakirenu V'Yedidenu, Shalchala Olama, Began Eden Tihimenuchata, Baal Harachamim, Yastireyo Beseter Kanafecha Leolamim, Vitzvor Bitzvor Achayim, Et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachalata, V'tanuach Beshalom Al Mishkava, V'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our beloved Esther Rosin, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence. And there in the shadow of your wings, let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May Esther rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. We may be seated. Judaism teaches us that we share intimately in all aspects of life, and that we bring our loved ones to these sacred, hallowed grounds. We do not leave that task to strangers alone. Instead, we share in that very act. In a moment, they will lower the casket for us in our presence. We will, at that time, conclude our service with the saying of the Kaddish. Following that, family members are invited and friends are invited to shovel in some shovelfuls of dirt or to drop in some flowers as a loving, parting expression of our gratitude to Esther Rosin. It's okay, hang on. Each of us has a name given by the source of life and given by our parents. Each of us has a name given by our stature and our smile and given by what we wear. Each of us has a name given by our mountains and given by our walls. Each of us has a name given by the stars and given by our neighbors. Each of us has a name given by our sins and given by our longing. Each of us has a name given by our enemies and given by our love. Each of us has a name given by our celebrations and given by our work. Esther was known by many names. She was daughter and sister, mother, wife, grandmother, aunt, friend. She was adventurer, traveler. She was a comedian. She was funny. All of those names capture a facet of the gem that was the woman, Esther Rosin, a gem that has been entrusted to our hearts and to our memories. We say shalom and not goodbye, for shalom is goodbye and hello and wholeness and peace all threaded together in one breath. And in one breath, we too say goodbye to a hand to hold, a kiss, and a tight embrace. And in the same breath of shalom, we say hello to an ocean of memories, a rush of emotion, gratitude and sorrow, tears and laughter and trembling and fatigue, all in one breath. The dust returns to the earth as it was. The spirit returns to God who gave it. It is only the house of the soul which we lay within the earth. The soul itself does not die. Oh God, help us to understand that grief and love go hand in hand, that the pain which loss inflicts is a measure of a love that is stronger than death. All things pass. All that lives must die. All that we prize is but lent to us, and the time comes when we must surrender it. We are travelers, travelers on the same road that leads to the same end. And in this spirit, O God, do we commit all that is precious to us, to your keeping, as we repeat the words hallowed by the generations, the words of the Kaddish prayer, which you can find in your memorial booklets on page 8 and 9. The Kaddish is a prayer that never mentions the word death or grieving or loss. It is a prayer that extols the greatness of God and acknowledges the mystery at the heart of life, that there is still so much we do not know about life, about God, about the invisible threads of connection that allows people to meet and their lives cross with our lives, and how we are able to learn and grow from their presence. The prayer began as a prayer shared at the conclusion of a period of study, a book of the Bible, a tractate of the Talmud. The rabbis, having engaged in debate and discussion, laughter and argument, learning from each other as they were about to part and go their ways, shared this prayer. What begins as a prayer at the conclusion of a period of study becomes a prayer we share at the conclusion of one's life, with whom we likewise lived and loved, argued, debated, laughed, and cried and learned. As a tribute again to Esther's memory, I invite us to rise as we are able. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divra chirute, v'amlich malchute, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehe shemei Rabbah nevarach, le'olam u'lalmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shemei dekudesha berichu, la'elam in kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May all of us who mourn and all of us who are bereaved, may we find through God's eternal presence a source of strength, courage, and hope. May we find from those who gather by our sides comfort during this difficult time. And let us all say, Amen. This concludes our funeral service. I invite those of you who would like to shovel in some shovelfuls of dirt or drop in some flowers as you choose. What,
We got some roses.
Drop them to your brother as well.
This concludes our funeral service for Esther Rosin. I invite you all to continue visiting, stay as long as you feel comfortable with staying. It is our tradition that we do the best we can to fill the grave, and so we do so immediately. To those of you joining us on our Zoom session, thank you for being with the family. This concludes our funeral service for Esther Rosin. This ceremony is also recorded on our YouTube channel. A link will be sent to Phil, who will then distribute to anybody who needs to either see the ceremony or would like to revisit the ceremony. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.